Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr. This is the OnTheStacks podcast.
Oh yeah, whoa, look, they can never keep me down, I'm going, and if I ever fail, just know I'll go again. I never quit, cause I know that every loss may lead to another win. I'm going up.
Today's guest is Al Ornoski, retired United States Lieutenant Colonel Army Ranger and founder and owner of Protection 6. In this episode, Al talks about the mental and physical strength he gained as an Army Ranger while living and fighting alongside Afghan forces during his deployment in the Middle East. Al recounts the stark reality he faced when his helicopter was shot down in Afghanistan, and the lessons he learned in the military that now translate to both business and civilian life. Al also shares his insights on the importance of trust, cultural understanding, and of course, patriotism. This episode would not be possible without the support of our sponsors, so please check them out in the show notes. I'm your host, Bill Corcoran Jr., and this is Al Ornoski on the Stacks.
So we fly in and we circle a couple times, and next thing I know, we start taking rounds. I mean, you could hear the rounds hitting the helicopter. Next thing you know, the helicopter pilots, they said, "Hey, mayday, mayday, we're going down, we're going down."
This episode is brought to you by Burn, the fitness company behind the Today Show approved Burn board. If I'm being honest, working out can be a real chore, especially as a new dad in desperate need of sleep and cardio. Burn is founded by NEPA native Jimmy T. Martin, and his Burn board offers a low-impact core and cardio experience unlike anything I've done before. They have hundreds of on-demand workouts that are great for beginners, seasoned athletes, and out-of-shape podcast hosts who love supporting small businesses. My wife and I use it pretty frequently throughout the week, and it's honestly a great way to burn a ton of calories without burning a ton of cash. Not to mention, it's a great tool for skiers, runners, wrestlers, and hockey players. Jimmy is offering all OnTheStacks listeners 15% off when they use the code STACKS15. Visit theburn.com today to get 15% off your purchase with code STACKS15 at checkout. Again, that's theburn, THEBRRN.com to get 15% off your purchase with code STACKS15. It's time to get on board today with Burn. This episode is brought to you by Kavanaugh's Grill, one of my favorite places to eat and drink in NEPA. They've got one of the best outdoor patios with 13 TVs and over 20 beers on tap. You can also dine inside at this cozy Irish-style pub where your beer never goes empty. Did I mention how delicious their food is? Their in-house smoked brisket, barbecue ribs, and wings are to die for. So grab your friends and have a drink on me at Kavanaugh's. Mention code STACKS for one free draft beer with purchase of any entree when you dine in. Located at 163 North Main Street in Mountaintop, Kavanaugh's is open at 4 p.m. during the week and 12 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday during football season. Dine in today at Mountaintop's only Irish-style pub.
Hey Northeast PA, Paul Perfect Storm here. Do you want your kitchen or bathroom to go from this to this? Well, Perfect Storm can do it.
Need a kitchen or bath remodel and don't know who the experts are? Perfect Storm Renovations. Expert designers and installers who can help you achieve the kitchen or bathroom of your dreams. Schedule your free in-home design today. Perfect Storm Renovations. High-end quality anyone can afford.
What's up, podcast? It's your host, Bill Corcoran Jr. here in the Blue Door Studio, protected by our friends at Ritchie Security Solutions. Al Ornoski, welcome to the OnTheStacks podcast.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you too. And you know what, Al, besides you being a Penn Stater, I got to tell you what else I like about you. Not only were you on time, but you were early.
Well, that's the military in me. I always want to be here, make sure I understand what the surroundings are, and be ready to go.
Yeah, I appreciate people that are, you know, I always say if you're not early, you're late.
You're late,
right?
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
You got to be early.
In this world, though, there are a lot of people that aren't that way.
Yeah, it's weird nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like a different generation. Even though you and I are different generations, I feel like I'm still like I still have a lot of those same. I don't know if you want to call them values or whatever you call them, but I'm just a big on-time kind of guy. I've always been.
Well, I think our parents instilled that in us.
Right.
That was NEPA here. That's what they did. I'm thankful that my mom and dad raised me with good discipline. And, if my dad said dinner was at 5:30, I definitely had to be seated at the
You
table.
better have had that ass in the seat, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or else.
Absolutely.
Or else.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. So, I'm excited to hear, a little bit about your military background. I always enjoy having veterans on. Just, I really appreciate, the service, your service to our country. And, basically, you sacrifice your whole life, to have people like me be able to do the things that I do. So, there's a lot to be said about that. And, I'm always just very grateful for people like you. And you've experienced a lot of things that most people never have and probably never will. And it's interesting. For the little that I do know about you from the conversation we had, and we've been following each other on social media for some time now, and we finally connected to make this happen. So
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Well, take me back. So I know I read something on that you said that you at 5 years old. You became interested in becoming an Army Ranger.
Yeah, it happened right in Wilkes-Barre, right across from the Hollenbach fire station there. There was a post office there. Went there with my mom to go to the post office. And there used to be a big stack of recruiting posters. And I saw a guy carrying camouflage on his face, had a patrol cap on, wearing ropes across his chest, and be a U.S. Army Ranger. And opened it up, jumping out of planes, being in jungles, doing all this cool stuff. And I was hooked. That was my goal.
That was it.
I was 5 years old. I was committed to being a Ranger. Wanted to do that. Everybody in high school knew that's what I wanted to do. Thankfully, with great coaches in football and baseball that taught us really discipline, I was able to attain that goal. And, I graduated Ranger School in May 17th, which is coming up, 1984, Class 7. So it's a long time ago, but it's an extreme leadership school that basically teaches you how to react under pressure, combat environments with limited sleep, and to be able to lead soldiers on small patrols. That's the method they use to teach you. I believe my class started with about 390, and we probably graduated about 45 of the originals. And we had some recycles in my class, people that go through. That's very common in Ranger School. When I went through, there was 4 phases. There was the Benning phase, then there was the Dahlonega phase, the mountain phase. When I went, there was a desert phase, and then the swamp phase in Florida. Now they don't have the desert phase, which to me is pretty amazing because we were fighting in the desert since 19, 20 years over in Iraq and Afghanistan. But it's something they did away with. So it was 58 days, and 58 days of hell. I remember I lost 46 pounds. Obviously a great weight loss tool, but I still remember my mom and dad drove down from Wilkes-Barre for my graduation, which was awesome. The night before, they allowed us, if our parents were in town, to stay at a hotel, and then we showed up for graduation. And I still remember my mom, when she saw me, she cried because, my eyes were sunken in. I lost 46 pounds. She didn't even know who I was. So she always talks about that, how, she said I looked like a POW at the time is what she said.
Wow.
My eyes were all sunken in and everything. But that was obviously, a very proud moment for my dad and my mom to be there. To pin the black and gold tab on me, just something that I'm never going to forget, and I treasure that. I treasure that memory, and of course all the skill set, the mental discipline that Ranger School taught me throughout the years. Great lessons to kind of learn and keep your life in focus. Really, determination, willpower when things are rough and maybe things aren't bad. To be quite honest with you. I look back to, my couple tours in Afghanistan, and did Ranger School prepare me? Yes. They say it was harder than combat, and maybe it was, because, when you have limited sleep. So that's what it wants to do. It wants to put you in a situation where you're not comfortable, It wants to make you lead when your fellow Rangers students are tired, they're hungry. And back then you had, when I went through, you had one meal a day. So, you basically, you had to do the best you can. Back then we had the C rations, which a lot of the older veterans will remember. It was in a can.
What year was this?
1984. So I believe I started in March. I started in March and I graduated on May 17th. So when I first went through, we had the C rations that a lot of the Vietnam vets and World War II vets, Korean vets would remember. It was cans. You had what was called a P-38. You kind of opened it up. There was eggs and pound cake.
What did it taste like?
Hey, in Ranger School, it tasted outstanding.
Did it?
To be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
And of course, you dreaded that meal. You dreaded when you couldn't have a meal and you just had to keep pushing. And then what we have now in the Army is called meal ready to eat, or MREs. I was introduced to them in the desert phase, which was 7 days. And they tried an experiment with my class. We were the first ones to really get MREs. Oh, yeah, that's class 784.
There it is.
That's awesome. That's my Ranger graduation.
Where are you at?
I am right in the front by the Georgia sign with my head, my patrol cap really pressed in there.
Okay.
So that's
I see it. Yeah.
That was an interesting thing, but we were Zulu warriors. And that's Ranger panties there. That was wives and girlfriends that sent in their panties, and we carried that around on a pole as we went through the course. So you could see that it's not a very big class.
Yeah.
So we started with almost 400.
So it was. We started with 400. What'd you end with? It was like 10% only, right?
Well, I think it was only 40 some of the originals. So there's probably 10 or 15 or 20 Ranger students there that I graduated with that. Basically they didn't make it through one phase, so they had to repeat the phase again.
Gotcha.
I was very. There's a lot of luck that plays into it too. 58 days going through without recycling. You could fail patrols. You could get medically disqualified. There's a peer evaluation that your peers have to rank you. If you don't do really good and you don't support everybody else, except when you're on a patrol, then they then they could kind of give you a bad rating. So there is a lot of luck, but in the end I was very well prepared when I went through Ranger School. I say this story all the time, playing bitty football with the Plains Yankees. Jack Robinson was my coach, God bless him. He was a Marine. I grew up with Teddy Jackson as a coach, John Quinn at Coughlin, and they were hard on you. And I think when I went to Ranger School I was really prepared. I ran a lot of laps around the old Plains Stadium, a lot of hills, because I wasn't, I was a knucklehead. I wasn't doing the right thing or ran the wrong play or listened to the wrong thing. So I credit those coaches. My dad was my Little League coach. Growing up, he was very hard on me. We'd have practice. We'd come home, go in and eat. Most normal people would do. My dad, I was a catcher. He'd go out in the yard, be throwing balls at me, after practice. So, I think back then you just, mentally you were different. Obviously there was no social media, there was none of that going on. Either played outside or that's what you did. So
that's it.
It's one of those things. But it's that obviously is a great experience and a great Pennsylvania story. Straw Brewery that's been around a whole long time in Pennsylvania, in St. Mary's out in the west. One of the Straw boys was in my class.
Oh, wow.
Is in that picture.
Wow.
So, that's a really cool Pennsylvania connection. I went out there after Ranger School and, the family gave me a tour and all that and, VIP treatment. It was awesome. So, and my dad drank straw beer a lot at the Legion in Plains. So,
small world.
Small world, right?
Yeah. So as an Army Ranger, like you guys are among like some of like the elite. Right?
They are. And, there's a big distinction. A lot of people get in arguments over this about who's a Ranger, who's not a Ranger.
Yeah, who's more badass, a Navy SEAL or an Army Ranger?
Yeah, well, you know what? We have our thing. But in the end, Ranger School is one step. You graduate from Ranger School. You're allowed to wear the black and gold tab on your dress uniform. Now it's a little different. You wear a little pin on there. but they still pin you with the original black and gold tab. And then there's actually 3 Ranger battalions and a Ranger regiment. And a lot of people will say, particularly the sergeants, the NCOs, if you don't serve in the Ranger battalion, you're really not a true Ranger. So I was blessed. My first duty assignment was Panama. That's still when we had the canal way back when. I got selected to go to 3rd Ranger Battalion, went through a 3-week assessment program before you could go ahead. You graduate from there, then you're able to put on your beret as an officer, served there as a lieutenant, got promoted to captain, had to leave, went to my advanced course at Fort Benning, went to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell. I served there as a staff officer and a company commander. I commanded Chop and Charlie, 3187 Rakasans, which has a very historic history and lineage from the Korean War. And then I got selected to go back to the Rangers from Fort Campbell. I went back there as a captain, served in the regiment at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I went down to 3rd Battalion, which was at Fort Benning, Georgia, and served as a staff officer and a company commander before I ended up getting out of the Army in June of '92. So
What's the pin on your lapel there? What you got? You got 2 of them.
So the first one is the Ranger Regiment pin. I kind of always wear that. I mean, that tells me, I graduated Ranger School, but I actually served in the Ranger Regiment, which I'm very, very proud of. And then the top pin is a Secret Service pin that you see a lot of people wear. I was given that when I was out protecting Dr. Oz during the Senate campaign. So it's kind of 2 things I wear. Obviously, very patriotic. I love this country. I remember reading that. You sent me like a little blurb, kind of just like a little background on you. And one of the things that stood out to me, like in the first, like literally in the first few sentences, like it was, I forget the exact wording, but it was something like proud American, whatever it was. And, I read that and I'm like, I think that's what is missing in this country. Well, I think, I grew up with my dad. My dad served in the Air Force, which at that time was during the Korean War, during the Berlin airlift. That's kind of when the Army Air Corps kind of transformed to the Air Force. And he was so extremely proud of his service in the Air Force, as a lot of the, veterans from Korea, World War II. I mean, Pennsylvania, has more veterans than just about any state out there. And obviously this was the coal region, as you well know, back then. So, that's what a lot of people did back then. And it was love of country. They loved their country. They went away. They didn't ask. They didn't fight it. They just went away. My dad every day had an American flag in the yard. That flag had to be perfect. I mean, if there was a crinkle, if it was fluttering the wrong way, he was upset. He also had a big Air Force plaque with the light on it, and I mean, so that was every day. I mean, I grew up with that, and I think I've learned that 9/11 happened, and we really came together as a country, America. And for me, without divulging the story, I was out for 9.5 years out of the Army. I got out in 1992. I swear I would never go in. I had my time. I achieved the goal. I was a Ranger. I was allowed to serve in a Ranger unit, and that was it. And 9/11 came, and I got the fire to go back in. And, a lot of people said, well, you're too old. You can't go back in. I was in really good shape. I went to the examination station, and they're like, oh, you got this wrong with you, that wrong with you. I looked at the doctor and I said, hey, doc, I'm an infantry officer. I spent 9.5 years in the infantry, 6 years in the Rangers. I'm a healthy specimen. Yeah, I had kidney surgery when I was 16 in high school, but I haven't had anything wrong with me since then. And the other doctor looked at me and signed off. So, after almost a 10-year break, I went back in, joined the Pennsylvania Army National Guard in Scranton, the 55th Brigade in October 2003. And in June 2004, I ended up being deployed to Afghanistan as a ETT, which is an embedded trainer. Basically, I lived, fought, slept with the Afghan army every day out in the middle of the mountains. So it was basically 2 Americans and about 100 Afghanis.
Wow.
And
just 2 of you.
Yeah. And I was their advisor. So along with a senior NCO, and that's how the Afghan army at the time was advised. We had these two-man teams that were split throughout. So I got there in August. It was 130 degrees, whatever it was.
Yeah, what was that like?
It was brutal. I still remember. I mean, we back then, when you came in, the plane did circles and dropped through the air, and you got this, like, your gut was, like, what's going on, and then you land and you're just sweating. You have all your body armor and your gear on, and they tell you, okay, well, we're going to give you one magazine of rounds, and you look at them, but
how many was that?
It was only 30 rounds.
Plus what you had in your that was loaded in the weapon. You didn't have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. They gave us 30 rounds, but there were security guys, other soldiers that were going to take you to the base.
Okay.
To give your briefings and get you trained. Then you'd get your
geared up more,
full load of gear and everything. But I mean, it was pretty stressful, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
When I was like, "What do you mean I'm only getting one magazine?
Yeah, what am I going to do with that?"
So we got that, and you get in place, and typically they give you maybe about a week or 10 days to kind of get yourself adjusted. And we were only there 2 days, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, we need somebody to go out, out on assignment." And I looked at my partner and said, "Hey, you want to go?" He said, "Yeah." It's like, they said, "Okay, well, you get 2 days to get ready." 2 hours later, they came back and said, "Hey, you're getting ready to go in 4 hours." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." 4 hours. I think the amazing story is I did not fly in an American aircraft to get out to where I was going. 3-hour flight.
Oh boy!
I got on a Russian contracted helicopter that took me out to my base.
Okay.
Out in the middle of nowhere on an old airfield out in Chechran, Afghanistan. And I had like 90 soldiers. They said, "Okay, you're going to have 2 hours, maybe 3 hours to get with your counterpart, and he could kind of tell you what's going on." Okay, perfect.
Kind of brief you.
So I'm mentally prepared. It turns out the Russian pilots are like, "You got 5 minutes." So
they were actually Russian pilots too.
Yes.
It wasn't just a Russian aircraft.
Oh no, it was it was Russian pilots.
Oh
yeah.
boy.
So I mean, this, I think people don't realize this. Back in 2004, there was no up armored vehicles. There was nothing. We were driving around Afghanistan in Ford Rangers.
Oh my God.
And Toyota Hiluxes.
Just like civilians.
Yeah, that's what we drove around in. And
that's wild.
So I mean, it was what I called Wild Wild West. I mean, you just went out, and honestly, we were in firefights all the time. We were getting shot at all the time, and it just was one of those things. And imagine, there's 2 Americans out there, with 70, 90 Afghans. And, I had interpreters, which were, incredible people.
So did none of the soldiers that you were with, they didn't speak English?
No.
So it was you and another guy, and you guys were in charge of 90 to 100 soldiers who none spoke English. But you had an interpreter, but none of them spoke English.
None of them spoke English.
How'd that work out?
Yeah. Well, the good thing for me is I learned to count probably right away 1 to 50 in Pashtun and Dari, and that way I could say Yakdu, Shar, Pash, Shan, and I could say 5 people go there, 10 people go there. Okay. So for me, it was just a way of and unfortunately early on, a lot of the interpreters, when we would get in a firefight, they would freeze up. So
and just take cover, probably, right?
They get scared, and so you're on your own.
Jeez.
So it's resilience. It's back to Ranger training. It's overcoming obstacles. It's figuring stuff out. So you're if you needed to call in air or anything like that, you'd have to get on the radio. So you're managing an awful lot.
You're doing it all
with 2 people.
Yeah, you're running the whole thing.
I mean, later on, I guess I would start with this. It was the first presidential election that they had ballots. So that was the first time they voted in Afghanistan. That was October of 2004. And President Karzai, their president, was elected at that time. But I was all the way up in Balamorgov and Gormash, which was on the Turkmenistan border. So imagine I was up there with, 70, 80 Afghans, me and another American. We were one night in a small little compound. We got attacked in the middle of the night. They threw grenades at us. The amazing part was, great story. They weren't baseball players like we are in America. So the grenades actually hit the outside of the wall, and it gave my Afghans time to react.
Wow.
And long story short, we called for air, and, things got, we survived. That was one of the, battles we survived. We got ambushed a couple times during that 3 weeks. Once again, we survived. Well, one thing, they talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal, and I have my whole other comments on that. But I will tell you, those Afghan soldiers that fought with me, they were brave. They would run right after the bullet or the machine guns a lot of times. They were more about protecting me and the other American than they were. So, and at that time, early on, 2004, 2005, they had love for their country. I mean, it was all new to them, so it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because, it's you and one other American, and you're going, up in the mountains somewhere, right? Never been there before. Have no idea. Almost like you don't know where you're getting yourself into, right? And you're being put with these Afghan soldiers that can't speak English. And how were you able to, again, because of the language barrier, how did you feel about being able to trust them?
Well, my dad told me a long time ago. I mean, my company that I have is Protection.
Yeah, I know. Literally,
Protection 6.
This is why I'm asking. I was going to say, your company is Protect Your 6, right?
Yeah.
And here you are going into this, and these guys are going to have to be protecting you as well. And,
In the end, always slept, obviously with a pistol right by me and my weapon right by me. I mean, in the end, there was a lot of what they called green-on-green incidents where Afghans would shoot Americans. I was always very protective because of what my dad told me. It's like, hey, protect your 6, protect your ass, whatever you got to do, you got to trust Americans. Well, it's kind of hard to do when there's 2 Americans and,
you're a little outnumbered.
You're responsible. So I think in the end, you build a rapport with them. And for example, they know, if you're interested, not interested, and maybe I could kind of tell you a little story after the election. But in the end, we got through this. One last story about the election. We did come under attack again another night, and I was trying to raise up the headquarters to call an air on the radio, and I couldn't get them. I had a satellite radio, I had 2 satellite phones, and with the mountains and everything, I just could not communicate with anybody. I ended up leaving a voicemail on one of the cell phones, the satellite phones, back 6 hours back at the camp to tell them we need air. Eventually, they listened to the voicemail. They scrambled air, and it worked out. But,
wow.
I mean, so we were really on that Turkmenistan border. We were kind of on our own. So
you were like on edge the whole time.
We were.
How are you not paranoid?
Well, I think you sleep with one eye open all the time is what you do, because there was a lot of threats during the election that they were going to try to attack the poll places where people were voting or things like that. So and when we first went through training in the States, they're like, well, you shouldn't eat the food, you shouldn't do this, but they were talking to normal soldiers. I was an advisor to the Afghans. I was out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I had no choice. I ate Afghan food every day. That's what I did. Okay. Yeah, I did have MREs with me, but you know what? I wanted to be part of the culture, so that's what I did. I learned dairy items weren't very good for Americans on our stomachs, so we tried to avoid the yogurt, the milk, or anything like that. But rice was common. Lamb, sheep, fish, things like that. So
tell me about the culture a little bit there.
Obviously, they're very religious, a lot of them. During Ramadan, they fast during Ramadan. So that was obviously an experience, because not only do we have to still soldier on, but they're not eating, they're not drinking water. I mean, it's like Ranger School times 10, is what they're doing. So, but in the end, you got to respect that. When they pray so many times a day, I mean, that's what they do. So I think I've always, that experience has taught me culture is important. And if you travel to a foreign country, which I've been maybe to 40, 50 countries around the world, I always try to adopt the culture and not be an American that, there's an American. So you just, you try to do that the best you can. And, I think it works out.
And I think that builds rapport.
Yeah.
And trust.
And they feel it.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, we could tell you a little story, but I guess another story would be after that was over with the two Americans. I told you I grew up in the Rangers. So it was December of that year after the elections was over. I got called. I flew back in, and they, I got called into the office, and they said, "Hey, listen, there's some special forces teams that are out there. We're going to hand select, a captain like you and a sergeant to go with them, and obviously your Ranger experience is perfect. So, do you want to do that?" Of course. So now instead of being two Americans, I got a whole A team, 11 other Americans. Yeah, this is heaven.
Yeah.
So
upgrade.
So I go out to Kandahar. I fly out there, and we're at Mullah Omar's, who was one of Bin Laden's big guy. We're at his compound that the Americans took over. There's a built-in swimming pool there, everything.
So you're like at a Hilton at this point.
Yeah, it was. I mean, so like,
Yeah.
I just, I mean, they, hey, I got the VIP experience,
Yeah,
right?
right?
Now, the fighting didn't subside, but in the end, they did. So we get out there, and they say, "This is your counterpart. This is, your captain, and this is the master sergeant." So the master sergeant looks at me, and all of a sudden, he goes, "Sir, who the hell did you piss off? You're still a goddamn captain after all these years?" And I looked at him, and he was one of my sergeants when I was a Ranger Company commander. And I said, "No, Goody," I said, "I was out for 10 years. I came back in. I've only been back in 6 months." And he goes, "Okay, sir." And I mean, I was
gave you a pass.
I was really taken care of. I mean, they, took outstanding care of me. They took care of my sergeant. Life was real good. I stayed there for 4 months. And then once again, I got a crazy call, and they said, "Hey, there's a couple ETTs like you that are out in the middle of nowhere with Afghans, and they froze up, and they won't go out with the Afghans. So we need somebody to go out there and take care of them." And I was like, "Okay." They're like, "We need to go right now." Well, the guys I was with, they didn't want to let me go. So that was ODA 716. They were great guys. So I said, "Okay, I'll go." Could my sergeant go? No, we have to leave him here. So I go out to Zabul province, out in the middle of the mountains. Snow's on the ground in Afghanistan, everything. I fly out there, and you know what? It's, my boss, my colonel says, "Hey, how are things out there?" I was like, "Oh, they're pretty good." He goes, "Really?" I was like, "Well, let's see. We've already been on patrol in 2 days. We've been outside with them, and they already trust me because I'm willing to go out with them. I mean, I've been fighting with these guys for 4 or 5 months, the other guys. So why would I not go out?" So long story short, that was a great relationship out there. I fit right in. I did get a sergeant who came in with me, and we kind of, things went along, and it was April 18th of that year, 2005, and we were just hanging out, and I got called in, and they said, "Hey, we got some intelligence. It's pretty solid. We picked up some signals. There's somebody that says there's this big Taliban meeting going on. We're going to see if the general will release quick reaction helicopters. Go get them. Get your Afghans ready." That was all I got. Went down to the Afghans with my interpreter and said, "Hey, Didn't tell them any details where we were going. Said, hey, there's a big meeting going on in the middle of the mountains. Bad guys, Taliban, maybe Al-Qaeda, and we're looking to go on helicopters. So let's go down, practice, some rehearsals, getting on and off helicopters, come back. I get the word that the mission's a go. So
Like all within the same day.
Oh yeah, this is 10.
Okay.
This is 10:30.
So you're training like minutes before you go.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean it's when I think back, it's just it's insanity.
It is.
10:30, I get the word. 12 o'clock, the birds land. 2 Chinooks, an Apache gunship helicopter, and we're told there'll be an A-10, which is an Air Force low-level flying,
things up.
best thing in the way.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to escort us in. So we get the briefing. I get the Afghans on board. I'm on helicopter number 2. My sergeant's on helicopter number 2. The other SF guys are split between bird 1, bird 2. We fly out there. We usually did all our raids at night like that in helicopters or early morning. So this was very unusual. You're going in, blind in the middle of the day. But hey, it was worth it. The target was there. So we fly in and we circle a couple times. And next thing I know, we start taking rounds. I mean, you could hear the rounds hitting the helicopter. And I mean, you could just hear it. They're coming at the helicopter, and then it's like, oh shit, what's going on? And there's some traffic over the air. Next thing you know, the helicopter pilots, they said, hey, mayday, mayday, we're going down.
On the Stacks will be back in a flash after a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Elevation Wellness, NEPA's premier wellness center located on Mundy Street in Wilkes-Barre. From pro athletes to busy parents, Elevation Wellness is leading the conversation when it comes to bettering your health through integrative medicine. Founded by NEPA native Louis Helmecke, Elevation Wellness offers physician-formulated and guided treatments that are administered by registered nurses. To learn more about how you can experience the benefits of IV vitamin therapy, multivitamin booster shots, non-invasive aesthetics, or peptide, NAD, red light, and compression therapy, visit elevation-wellness.com or follow them on Instagram at Elevation Wellness NEPA. All On The Stacks listeners will receive 10% off their first purchase with code STACKS at checkout. Call 570-762-9400 or visit elevation-wellness.com to book your appointment today. Elevation Wellness, taking your health to new heights. Welcome to the future. While you're hearing this ad in the present, the Center for Technology Innovation at Lackawanna College is preparing students for the jobs of tomorrow in the world of advanced technology. The Center for Technology Innovation will offer undergraduate degree programs, corporate training, as well as short-term stackable certificates in areas such as robotics, cybersecurity, electric vehicles, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. Based at a 90,000 square foot facility in downtown Scranton, Pennsylvania, the Center for Technology Innovation is located 2 hours from the major cities of New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia, and is just 15 minutes from a commercial airport in a region thriving with tourist attractions and a vibrant restaurant, educational, and cultural scene. Lackawanna College is a proven industry-leading innovator. But don't just take my word for it. Fast Company even recognized Lackawanna College's reputation for innovation by naming them to their top 10 list as one of the world's most innovative companies. For more information or to enroll, call 877-346-3552 or visit lackawanna.edu.
I have the privilege of representing people who have been injured through no fault of their own, and they come to us and they place a lot of trust in us, and we represent them against corporations and insurance companies, and we make those companies know that our clients have a story, that they deserve compensation, and I'm proud to be able to do that for our clients at Anzalone Law.
To learn more, visit Anzalone Law offices online at anzalonelaw.com. And now we're back on the Stacks.
They said, hey, mayday, mayday, we're going down. So he goes, you got to exit left. So, okay. So, all you're thinking is, I'm not really sure how hard we're going to crash in. So we slam into the ground really hard. We do get off. Next thing you know, we're met by gunfire, RPGs, massive fire. We're like maybe 50 meters, 100 yards from the bad guys. They're dug in an orchard, and so the A-10 is coming down, swooping, it's shooting. The Apache's shooting, things are blowing up. They're throwing grenades at us. That's how close they are.
Wow.
I mean, it's insane. So the other aircraft, they start to push towards us and everything. Long story short, a miracle happens. The Afghans are well trained. The day ends. No Americans are injured. No Afghans are injured. We probably end up, with 10 or 12 Taliban/Al-Qaeda guys that were killed, another 10 wounded, and maybe another 15, 20 that we took as
Did you get the target?
As prisoners. Yeah, we got everybody. There was actually 3 Al-Qaeda guys. There was Chechen fighters there. This was the real deal. Like,
wow.
We got it. Now, any other day, maybe the incident is bad, but hey, things were trained. The Apache.
You had your 10-minute training before you flew out.
Well, listen, I'm here today talking to you because that Apache pilot, the A-10 pilot, the bravery of the Afghan soldiers, and of course the 11 Special Forces American guys were incredible.
Wow.
So that all happened. Then I was tasked with I didn't say this, but the helicopter was basically disabled. Of course.
I want to talk about that for a second. So, like, this helicopter crashes. You guys crashed this, and everybody survived.
We did.
I mean, like, first of all, like, just that alone is wild, right?
Yeah, we did.
What went through your mind the minute you hit the ground?
Just what they told me, get off left and keep going. And that, unfortunately we were met by gunfire. And, when there's heavy fire coming at you, it feels like a swarm of bees. That's, to me, what it feels like, being under fire a lot. That's kind of what it felt like. So it's a miracle that nobody got hit. But once again, I will tell you, the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda guys, they're not the best marksmanship in the world.
Not good aim, huh?
So they spray and burn, like I like to say. And, that's probably, what saved us that day.
Yeah.
But,
wow.
And there was a rock wall there, almost like
so
growing up here. So we were able to definitely get some cover.
Wow.
And,
that's crazy.
I was a captain. I carried an M16, but I had a grenade launcher with me on there. So I was shooting, 203 rounds like crazy, so it was a wild experience. And then, we kind of went through, we maneuvered around, and I remember we got to some high ground with the Afghans, and I remember looking up and I saw the A-10 pilot, like almost like you and me looking at each other. I was like, wow, this is surreal. Like, he just gave me the thumbs up, and, it's like, okay, we're ready to go. So, we extracted out, half the team stayed on the ground to guard the helicopter. They sent in what's called a quick reaction force. They sent 150 soldiers in to guard the helicopter. 36 hours later, the helicopter was flown out. They made enough repairs. No soldiers on it or anything, but they made enough repairs that they could fly it out. Because there's 2 options: you try to fly it out, or you blow it up. So they decided they could make the repairs. They sent an emergency team out there. I actually extracted with all the dead and the wounded and the prisoners on the first bird, and it was just total chaos because they were still shooting at us from the mountains.
Oh, wow.
So like, it was just, I just remember, don't take off. They were yelling, don't take off. But, it was chaos because I was just, I was in the middle of all that, and just, and then, when we got there, obviously we got back to base, we separated out and everything. And, I guess the crazy story about that is, my wife heard that there was a real bad incident. Of course, the Taliban reported that they shot down 2 helicopters and they killed a bunch of Americans, and that's
true.
That's how all that that's how they do things
Propaganda.
over there. Propaganda.
Yeah.
So so she thought
fake
something,
news.
Yeah.
So they do fake news over there too.
Oh
my
yeah.
God.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
They're probably the first ones that
they might have been the OGs of fake news. They might have started it.
That really did it.
Yeah.
So I called my wife on a satellite phone. When I was back, like a normal day, I would call her every other day or something just to check in. And the wife had told her about this bad incident, and I kind of let on that nothing was there. And 10 years later, we were out at dinner with somebody, and somebody made a comment that I was a hero that day, and that's how my wife found out I was shot down. But
So you didn't even tell her?
No, I never told anybody.
Why not?
I just thought it was something that why go down that road? And in hindsight, I think that was probably a very good move on my part, because no sooner I got home in 2005, I was back to Afghanistan in 2007, 2008. So, I think that just would have put the fear factor up more.
It was the best white lie you ever told, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you just gotta, you gotta kind of keep things to yourself. But obviously, a lot of heroes that day. A lot of Afghan soldiers. My counterpart, the captain, Rahmatullah, amazing soldier, brave warrior. He actually got the President's Medal for that day from President Karzai at the time. And, of course, other, Americans got Valor Awards and things like that. But, I mean, in the end, the odds were stacked against us. And needless to say, we beat the odds that day. So
Wow. Incredible.
So.
It's wild. So like in that moment, obviously you're probably, you may or may not have been thinking back to like Ranger training school, but like how did your training prepare you for a moment like that? Because at this point, you probably, I would say maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was probably one of the, most craziest situations you've probably been in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a lot of firefights there, ambushes, things like that. But I mean, this was intense. When you got, the sad part about that, there was like 13-year-old kids throwing grenades at me.
Oh, man.
Day. And that's something that unfortunately is never going to leave my brain. But that's the way those kids were raised. And I'd just like to tell a brief story about that. This kid was probably 13 years old. He was probably shot 8 or 9 times, and he survived. And I mean, we're moving across, and he's yelling and screaming. Of course, we're moving on, and we're going to take care of him, when we can. And the medics end up saving his life, take care of him. He was on that bird that I went on. So he shot 8 or 9 times, guts hanging out everywhere. And, he survives. So, a couple days go on, and, I go up to the medics, and I'm going, hey, I'd like to know, how did you, how'd you deal with that? And they looked at me, and they're like, Sir, Al, they said, it's awesome training, because if that same situation ever happens to an American, now we have real world experience that we could save a life. And that's always stuck with me, that they were able to do that. And I'm proud that day too. I mean, my Afghans could have went across and they could have shot those guys as they were going across, but they were trained, we trained them right, and they were disciplined enough and they respected culture enough that they didn't do that. And I think that's a story that you won't hear a lot from people.
Yeah. Wow. So the 13-year-old survived. Like, did you have any contact with him after that?
No, I mean, he went back to the he flew back on the base with the helicopter with me, and they worked on him there again. The SF medics worked on him, and he was extracted out, and they sent him in, and he survived.
Wow.
9 times he was shot.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's just, it's amazing, actually.
Yeah. Wow. Whew. That is like some crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, obviously, it's almost like I'm back there.
Yeah.
Like experiencing it. But it's,
yeah.
It's a story that, I'm very proud of the Afghans I served with. They're very brave.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. You mentioned like how they would just run towards bullets.
They do that all the time. And
just to protect you.
Yeah, they always felt like they were protecting the Americans. Like, I mean, if there was a machine gun, we would kind of have them want to maneuver, but they always wanted to, run right at the fire. That's just, they were brave.
Wow, that's crazy.
Very brave.
Yeah. Geez. Whew. Well, what was that? What was after that, man? I hope you got a little breathing room after this.
Well, you know what? After that, probably I had a couple months left. So, we went out on some other patrols. A story that we had an IED blow up one of the Afghan vehicles, the Ford Rangers, pretty close to camp. and we ended up going out there and going to the village where we suspected it. And of course, they said, "Hey, we haven't seen Taliban in 2 years. No, nothing, all of that." So there was a bridge that went across the river there. That was the way they got across. So at the time, he who has a bigger weapon wins. We went out the next day. We blew the bridge, and like magic, they told us who set the ID. So long story short, it took probably about 4 or 5 months to rebuild that bridge. So they probably learned the lesson.
Yeah.
That they probably should have turned that person in. So
yeah,
but I mean, back then it was the Wild Wild West. It really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to know, people like me and probably most Americans with unless they hear from people like you and hear these stories, there's probably a lot that goes on or a lot that has gone on that most Americans wouldn't know because the media in America may not tell the whole story, but they also may not know some because some could be obviously classified information or whatever. But I just want to make people aware, obviously through you, but make people aware of what really went on, because like you said, it was like the Wild Wild West, and I feel like a lot of that isn't talked about in America.
Well, I think early on there was embedded reporters that spent time there. I was fortunate enough at that camp, which was Camp Lane in Zabul province, with the incident I described. Tom Brokaw, probably one of our greatest journalists of all time, called World War II the greatest generation of all time. Very respected journalist. Obviously, growing up as a kid, that's who you watched on TV. And he spent 3 days embedded with us, went out on patrols and everything. So his story was, it was for Nightline, if I remember at the time, NBC, and it was a 3-part series. So he was at CIA headquarters first. He did that. The second segment was to come visit us and see how Americans were training Afghan soldiers. And then the third step was he went to Pakistan, and at the time the president was President Musharraf, and he interviewed him. So that was kind of the global war on terror. That was his story, pulling everything together. But he was an incredible person, very down to earth, very humble. Obviously got some quality time with them, one-on-one, a couple hours just talking with them. Probably interviewed every world leader on stage that you could ever imagine. So
and Al Ornoski.
Yeah, and I mean, he was able to talk to me. And I think one of the reasons he was able to talk to me so much was he had a security guy with him, an advisor.
Okay.
And when he first came out, I was in a different vehicle, and then I jumped in the vehicle. And I had sunglasses on, my helmet and everything.
Looked like a badass dude, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I was ready. We were ready to rock and roll. And his advisor goes, I said, "Hey, sir." I said, "You're not a security guy. You're a retired Ranger." And he looks at me and goes, "Huh?" And I go, "Yeah, you were my deputy commander in the Ranger Regiment." He goes, "Take your sunglasses off." And he goes, "Al," he goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" He didn't know who I was with, what was going on. And he was the deputy commander of the Ranger Regiment when I served there. So,
wow.
I mean, small world. So of course he brought me into their hooch. Here's Tom. So I mean, I got extra treatment, which was incredible. But the story about respect goes, we went to have a local meal with the local elders, and of course, we took Tom Brokaw and his advisor with them, and the team captain, the SF team captain, he sat up front, and a couple people sat up front, and I could just kind of worked my way towards the back. My soldiers stopped everything, and they would not start the meal until I was up front, sitting next right to Tom Brokaw.
Wow.
And that's kind of what we went back: trust, respect. I did everything with them. I was one of them, and I guess that's a great story. That's how they showed me respect. Culturally, that was to them. Okay, I got it. The other 11 Americans are great guys, but you really are our advisor, and we want you right up here, up in front. So
that's really cool.
So it's it's respect goes both ways. Needless to say.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool to hear that, man. Because like you said, going back to right when you arrived there, it's like, man, what am I? you don't know what to expect. And, to be able to build like that trust with them, that's especially with the language barrier. I mean, like that's probably really, really, really hard to do.
Yeah, and you know what? I could say this. I was very fortunate during those elections, what I told you. I had an amazing interpreter. As a matter of fact, he's a great success story before all this happened. Myself and a couple other soldiers worked early on to get him to America, which we did. He's been an American citizen for about over 10 years.
That's awesome.
He works for the State Department now, so it's pretty cool.
Really cool.
So, but listen, he was one that I trusted 100%. I mean, if
your life was like literally in his hands.
And I got spoiled with him because, if I said A, B, and C, he interpreted A, B, and C. Some of the interpreters down the road, they might have injected their own thoughts or their own political beliefs. So you really,
bits and pieces.
But he was one that I trusted, and I promised that I would, I would help him and his family get to the United States, which we did. So,
wow.
It's
pretty
It's
incredible.
a great success story.
Yeah.
I mean, he lives in Connecticut now, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still keep in touch with him after all these years.
That's so cool. Well, I hope he's listening. Hope we're going to send this to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so after your deployment, what did you do?
Well, I was full. So after my deployment, I had a couple options. At the time, I could have went and worked as a security contractor with Blackwater, or the National Guard said, "Hey, you could be a full-time officer in the Guard." So that would mean I could continue my career and I'd be able to retire after 20 years. So, I kind of weighed both back and forth. The sexy thing was being a security contractor overseas.
Yeah.
But I think the right thing to do for myself and my family was to, take the full-time position. So I accepted the full-time position, got promoted to major pretty quickly after coming back from Afghanistan, and worked full-time in the Guard until I was off to my second deployment in 2007, 2008, back to Afghanistan.
Wow. So, you did that again, right? Like you go back.
This time was a little different because I was a major. So I was the second in charge of a battalion that had 500 soldiers.
All Afghans?
No. This time all Americans.
Okay.
So no Afghans.
Okay.
No Afghans. But there was missions we went on with Afghans.
Okay.
But it was pretty much all Americans.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it was
a little different.
Little different. And a lot of guys from northeastern Pennsylvania. We were a Guard unit, so Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, Tamaqua, all of that area. I mean, local guys, we protected all the what's called provincial reconstruction teams. They were teams that went and helped the Afghans farm, things like that, with governance, and we provided the security throughout the country for them. Then we had a maneuver force, which we were at a FOB, and then we had a remote outpost in the middle of nowhere. That, quite honestly, those guys, anybody that served on that outpost in the jail was amazing. These were all guardsmen, state troopers, UPS workers. I mean, you name it, that's who they were. And that place came under attack just about every night. They were there. Wow. So pretty amazing soldiers, from Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania, proud.
There's something about these NAPA guys, man.
I love NAPA. I'm telling you, I've been all around the world. I hear people say, "Oh, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here." But the truth of the matter, Bill, as you know, a lot of people gravitate back to NAPA. Okay, some of my, a lot of my classmates talked a lot of smack when they got out of college or whatever,
yeah.
But they're still here. I mean, hey, the roots are nice. Our parents, established a nice place in northeastern Pennsylvania. We were the coal region. I mean, we've come a long way since then, obviously, technology and things like that. But there's a lot to do. I mean, you do have Philadelphia a couple hours away. You got New York a couple hours away. You got the Poconos. You got Allen. I mean, there's a lot. Bloomsburg Fair. There's a lot of traditional things that go on here that I think are pretty incredible. So
yeah.
I love NAPA. I love it.
And with all your travels, I mean, and other people have said this too on the show before, but you've obviously been a lot of places and a lot of good places, also a lot of bad, scary places, and it's no different. You know what I mean? Like everyone complains, right? And it's like, wherever you go, people are still going to complain. And it's
just the way it is. I mean, we have great restaurants around here. Obviously, there's a lot. I think COVID really crushed a lot of family businesses, but there's still a lot of good Italian restaurants, things like that have been around, multi-generational, that go. So I mean, that's something that we enjoy in NEPA, right? I mean, we have we have Breaker Brewery Company, local brewery company there. You got Benny Brewing, a lot of good local beer. Yeah, so Pennsylvania's blessed. We got Yuengling, we got Straub that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
New Trail out of Williamsport. That's a very popular beer now. So I mean, I think we're really blessed here. Trogs, down by Hershey Park. So I mean, Pennsylvania. I mean, that's 5 or 6 beers that are nationally known. So it's pretty amazing place, really.
Yeah. So all right. So after these deployments, when you finally came back to NEPA and settled back down here, like what was your plan?
I think the plan was stay in the Guard, press on, get my 20 years and retire. That's what I wanted to do. So for me, that would be a full retirement, full Army retirement. That's what I wanted to do. I got out in, served different positions, include being a commander of the 109th Infantry up in Scranton, and got out in August of 2015 and was focused, obviously, on security. That was my kind of forte, doing that. I was still on leave. I got a call and said, hey, there's a security gig going on in Virginia by Roanoke. Basically, their security team's going out with Mountain Valley Pipeline. They're doing surveys of the pipeline. Are you interested? Yeah, sure, I'm interested. Ended up going down there. I wasn't there but 3 or 4 weeks, and long story short, they got rid of the detail leader who's in charge of everybody. I took over, and I did that for 9 months. So we escorted out survey crews, bat people, bug people, frog people.
No Russian aircrafts?
No Russian aircraft. But when you're building a pipeline, the environmentalists get involved, and they do a lot of due diligence. So we were there to protect the crews. A lot of people didn't want the pipeline coming, rural Virginia. So, we had challenges with homeowners and things like that. But we worked with the state police and the sheriffs, and, that was okay. And I was like, okay, hey, this pipeline stuff is pretty good. And I ended up going out to Iowa for a 2-week thing on the pipeline out there. And I was getting ready to leave. And I ran into this guy, and he said, hey, I work for a company called Tiger Swan. I'm getting a new job from them. I was like, oh, yeah, what do they do? He goes, well, they're out here helping with the pipeline or whatever. I was like, so I looked them up and like, hey, Jim Reese, Delta Commander Ranger. Like, I know Jim Reese. Jim Reese was a lieutenant when I was a captain in the Rangers. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I called the HR director, and I said, hey, she goes, well, we're not hiring or whatever right now. I said, could you do me a huge favor? Could you just mention my name to Jim Reese, please? I said I served with them, and could you do that? 5 minutes later, I got a call. He said, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm coming back to Pennsylvania. He goes, no, you're not. He goes, I'll have somebody there in 10 minutes at your hotel. Stand by. And he hired me within an hour, and I went out to North Dakota, and I oversaw the security efforts of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which there was a lot of challenges out there. There was over 20,000 protesters on Army Corps of Engineer land. There's a lot of misguided media stories that, they were going through the reservation and everything, which wasn't all true. They were off and everything. And, I had a great opportunity to do that. So to me, that's the pipeline that really gave America energy independence at the time. So, I mean, that you talk about a strategic asset to America. The protests were so bad. I will tell you that any given day, there was 435 law enforcement officers on duty. That was highway patrol. That was sheriffs. That was sheriffs from around the country, state police from around the country. Every single day, their National Guard was deployed. They had a tent city set up to feed them, and we were kind of managing the risk for the pipeline company and kind of doing all that. So, I mean, I had a great opportunity to do that. Moved on from there, and there's a pipeline that went through southern Pennsylvania down by Philly called the Mariner East 2 pipeline. And I worked for Tiger Swan doing the initial 120-day risk assessment of the pipeline there, and was asked if I want to go to Iraq. Went to Iraq in December of 2017 to run an American security company in Iraq. We provided security for diplomats, business people traveling, the largest media organizations in the world, Associated Press, Reuters, Agency French Press, Middle East Broadcast, and CNN, Fox. If there was media in Iraq, we basically secured them 24 hours a day at their headquarters, and then also when the reporters went out under certain conditions and things like that. So did that. As a matter of fact, I still oversee that now as a consultant. I was last on the ground in 2020. You might remember in 2019, the U.S. Embassy got burned up in Iraq. And then after that, we took out Salmanini, one of the leaders, and I came home after that and haven't been kind of back since then. But I still oversee operations. We still oversee a lot of the media stuff there. I do it remotely. I worked with, once again, I guess it's my forte, very few Americans over there. Most every employee I had was an Iraqi. They've been working with the American forces since the 2003, since the invasion. So they spoke very good English. Most all my management team, you wouldn't, if we were talking here, you
wouldn't even know.
They were Americans. So
wow.
I mean, life was pretty good for me. But once again, I engulfed myself in culture over there. I acted as the overseas chairman for the embassy for 2 years. It's kind of a civilian position that all private businesses, it's called Overseas Activity Council. There's one in every country, and you get involved with the embassy and things like that. So I did that, and I went out on the town quite a bit. The ambassador at the time said I went out more than any other American over there. I was comfortable with the culture, and of course, I had security guys with me all the time, even though I was a security guy.
Yeah.
I had
security guys for security guys.
I had Iraqis with me all the time. So I went out to restaurants. I ate the food. We had 2 villas there that we housed American clients, international clients. We had 2 chefs on duty. We fed them every day.
What was your favorite food?
I think I liked I liked sheep and lamb quite a bit. The fish was really good. They had the fish over there that they cooked on the charcoal every day. I really like that. I like shawarmas. I love shawarmas. Probably ate them a couple times a week. So I kind of engulfed myself, and they call it naan in Afghanistan. They call it bread there, but different types of bread that are made every day, fresh. Any American that ever traveled there, that's the first thing. Hey, can we get fresh bread?
The bread's the thing.
Bread, it's awesome. It's cooked. Cooked hot. You
very
get it
fresh.
back, very soft, very fresh. You do that. I guess the interesting part about Baghdad, Iraq. So Baghdad, Iraq is still obviously you talk about it's the Arabic culture. The Muslim culture. They don't really allow alcohol, but they kind of do. There's one street along the Tigris River there where there's alcohol shops that are there. The interesting thing is, during the Saddam days, he allowed alcohol. There was no problem. And people would go to those liquor stores, and they would come across in the park and drink liquor. But like the hotels can't have liquor or anything. Now, if you go up to Kurdistan in Erbil, it's just like being an American up there. They serve, in all the hotels. They have bars that are run by Christians. So, I mean, it's a whole different world. So when most people say, hey, I go to Iraq, most foreigners want to go to Erbil,
Yeah.
Kurdistan, because it's just like being in America.
Yeah.
In Baghdad, it's a little different,
A little more local.
But you know, a lot of the soldiers would know this. You know, they called it a green zone. That was kind of by the embassy and where other government offices were. That was kind of a very protected area. And then everything else outside that was in the red zone. So, you know, we had the villas. We lived in the red zone. We didn't live in the green zone, all that. And a great story I have is, you know, after ISIS, the U.S. Chamber decided they were going to bring about 100 Americans to Iraq. And I ended up, you know, my company, Tiger Swan, we were responsible for the 100 Americans that were there. We brought them to the hotel at the time, the Babylon Hotel, took them back and forth to the embassy to meet with the ambassador, to the prime minister's house, a certain part of the delegation, president's house. And I remember we got on these armored buses the first night when we were going to the embassy, to the ambassador's cookout. And, you know, I gave him a quick briefing. Hey, here's what's going to happen. We have security teams behind us in vehicles. This is how long it's going to take. We're going to get met at the gate, you know, by Americans. I went through the whole procedure. And, you know, what are your questions? You know, a couple hands went up. Are we actually living in the red zone at this hotel? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And they just like, because everybody before this had previously always lived in the green zone. You know, when they stayed at hotels in the green zone. So this was a very, historic event. Obviously, the ambassador got involved. He was at the conference for a couple days. Rick Perry, who at the time was Secretary of Energy, he was over there speaking. So it's a big responsibility for my company and myself to orchestrate all that with Americans. As a matter of fact, they're in the process, the chamber's in the process of going back to Iraq within a couple months, and I've been kind of organizing that behind the scenes. So,
wow. So I'm from what I understand, you've done some security for some very well known people in the United States as well, including Dr. Oz.
Yes. Yeah. I had the fortunate opportunity during the Senate campaign. Kicked off with the first event in Old Forge, right up the road here at Arkello and Janelle's. That was his first campaign event. He kicked off, and I was called at a last minute notice and asked if I could help out.
And you were like the personal security guard.
Yes,
for Dr. Oz.
I was.
Right.
So. An amazing opportunity. Every single event across the Commonwealth, I had myself and other folks with them. Large public appearances. I was his personal guy.
So wherever he went, you went.
Pretty much so. I was with them at the Trump rally here in Wilkes-Barre. Got to see a lot of my good friends from Wilkes-Barre here who were sending me selfies and everything, snapshots of me and stuff. So I was out with them in Western Pennsylvania early on in Greensburg during the early campaigning, and then at the end of the campaign, the last 10 days, we did about 3,700 miles across Pennsylvania every day. Pretty much every venue had, nightly venues were between maybe 1,200 and 1,500 people daily. And then we ended up with a Trump rally out in Latrobe. So, Dr. Oz was an amazing person. I got to know him. I got to know his wife, Lisa, his family. They were incredible people. He campaigned every single county across the Commonwealth, spent a lot of time with people, was open to questions, never had written questions or certain people that asked questions. I mean, he was very, very open, extremely open. I think, most of the people really reacted to him. He was very articulate. He was very passionate. He was very passionate about COVID, and what we did, forcing vaccinations on people, on kids, he had grandkids, things like that. And he opened all that up during the campaign. So, Pocono Raceway, large events we went, things like that. I was with him on a one-on-one level, but all his political events, I managed the security, the whole campaign, the whole entire 11 months. And then, personal, large public appearances or things like that. And of course, the last 10 days of the campaign, we traveled, like I said, almost 4,000 miles across the Commonwealth. So
Wow.
he's, great person, really patriotic, really believed in America, home of the brave. That was his thing. Talked about the national anthem, home of the brave. You can't be free if you're not brave, and you got to speak up and say what speak your piece. And there's people in the media that, of course, didn't like certain things he said, but he never shied away from the media at all. He was very open, and definitely open with the people. Whether it was, older people, younger people, nurses, doctors, farmers, it didn't matter. I think he could connect to anybody. And, I think that's probably from years on his show. He dealt with so many different people that he's just a very, very humble, down-to-earth person.
That's cool. So you had a pretty important job there.
It was. And and obviously, I took it very seriously. I would like to do a shout out to law enforcement across the Commonwealth. Pretty much everywhere we went, I coordinated with local law enforcement, who was incredible. Police chiefs, officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, the state police. Everybody was incredible along the way. Secret Service, allowed me to move along with Dr. Oz at the Trump events and everything, which was incredible. A great experience, at these big rallies and everything. So
yeah,
but obviously, good due diligence all the time. I had a great team of guys that worked with me at the events. We were very, very well prepared. Like I said, we coordinated with law enforcement all the time. We advanced all the locations. We made sure things were right. And everything, there was times when, maybe the media got overly aggressive, particularly on election night, things like that. So, we were well prepared and we reacted. And I know in the end, he thanked me, a lot for what I did throughout the campaign. And his campaign staff was incredible. They're good people. We had many visitors to Pennsylvania. Ben Carson, Nikki Haley, who's running for president now, Senator Kennedy, Senator Collins. I could go on and on and on. They all came. So when they were at an event, obviously we were responsible for them too. And, they were great people in and out. And a lot of his folks moved on. They're working for different campaigns to include, Nikki Haley and other campaigns right now. So I think once they get in that arena, they kind of stay in that political arena. That's kind of what they do.
Yeah. So I have you mentioned Secret Service a couple times, and I have I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it yet, so I won't actually say like who, but I have a friend that's currently interviewing with the Secret Service.
Awesome.
You got any advice for him? Because I know he's gonna be watching this.
I think the only thing I would ever say is, polygraphs, things like that. Be 100% honest, because if they're asking you a question, they already know what the answer is. So
right.
There's no deception. There's no fooling around. They've done their due diligence.
Like a good lawyer, they never ask a question they don't know the answer to. Right.
That's 100% right.
Yeah.
So and listen, I've had soldiers, that have gone through the process. A lot of soldiers. Something that I'm blessed is I have a couple great mentors. General Gronsky's one of my mentors. He's phenomenal. He's helped me with my business. We talk almost weekly. He's a good person, and I try to do the same thing. I mentor, a lot of folks in the security arena. My ex-soldiers, a lot of them got into law enforcement. A lot of them got into the state police. I have one soldier recently going to be an air marshal. Just ran into him in the gym the other day. So, I think that's important. I know there's a lot of folks out there that, work hard on mentorship, whether it's military, non-military. But I think the military's really stepped up to the plate, not only with mentorship, with veteran transition when individuals are getting out of the military. I'm involved with a couple groups that I do that. On the security side of the house, if they need some advice, help them out, maybe help them through the resume process, the job process. It's really important because it's a culture shock coming from the military going into the civilian world. I've been blessed because the security arena is very close to, the military. So even though it's the civilian world, you're dealing with civilians, there's still a lot of principles that you learned in the military, that you could kind of use on the security side. Skill set is there. But in the end, obviously everybody's about the gun, but reality is, protecting people, there's a lot of soft skills that are important. Obviously routes, advancing a restaurant if somebody's going to eat there, the venue that they're doing a speech at. I mean, all of that is important, those kind of soft skills. Having a backup plan, having a tertiary plan. I mean, those are things that not a lot of people could do. And I think the people that are successful at protection are able to do those and do them well. Certain apps on the phone, you don't need to be talking while whoever you're protecting is in the back. I mean, so you have to have a good game plan. And listen, in the end, you got to be flexible. I remember, the last week of the campaign, we were in Hazleton for an event, right? Well, this was very common, hey, let's go to Jimmy's. I hear that's a good hot dog place. Well, okay, great. I didn't prepare for it, but I had checked that.
Improvise, huh?
I had checked that off as that may be a place we want to go.
Okay.
Dr. Oz always wanted to stop supermarkets, diners. He loved diners. We went to.
So you had to anticipate and scout all these places before going.
Yes, we went to more diners. We were at Eddie's Diners probably 3-4 times.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody.
He's a diner guy.
The whole campaign loved Eddie's Diner.
Yeah,
I mean,
classic.
Now it's D's Diner.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But I'm old school. I still call it, I still call Hoban.
You're
still
right.
Call
so
Hoban.
do I. Yeah, so do I.
Instead of Redeemer. My daughters would be upset at that. But
yeah. They're gonna yell at you and be like, "Come on, Dad."
Absolutely.
So but Protection 6, explain your logo and the branding, because I really like branding, and I think you have a unique story with your brand and your logo. So explain that, and we'll throw the logo up on the screen so people can see it when they're watching.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Protection 6, I kind of got that from my dad in Afghanistan when he's like, hey, you can only trust Americans, always protect your six. He always said that. So when I retired out of the military, I started my own consulting company called Protection 6. And, everybody has to have a logo, a symbol, kind of something like that. So, I was like, okay, well, I was pretty fixated on what I wanted to do. I love the Rhino. So on my second tour in Afghanistan, my soldiers gave me the nickname Rhino. Basically, I didn't take shit from nobody, and I was about protecting my soldiers and taking care of them. And a very brief story. We went, at the time, I told you the first tour, we didn't have any up armored vehicles. So the second tour, we had up armored vehicles. They were evolving. The MRAP was starting to come in, but we still had the Humvee, and they were making the armor a little better. So they said, hey, sir, you could go down 3 hours to bring your soldiers down. You could look at some Humvees, and we'll give you newer Humvees than you have. Some of our Humvees were shot up, things like that. Okay, no problem. So we go down there, and they take me to this yard, and these things looked like crap. There was holes in them. They were blown up. They were everything. So I was like, this is effing bullshit. My soldiers deserve better. And I looked at him, I said, let me tell you something. The commander of this unit, we were in the Rangers together. Yeah, I took a 10.5-year break, and the sergeant major, we were in the Rangers together. I'm marching right down there, and I'm going to sort out, and we're going to get newer vehicles. And he looks at me and goes, sir, walk over to this other yard. These are brand new. You could take anything you want for your soldiers. And the Rhino was born. So I got the nickname Rhino. So when I was a commander, they named me, the commander typically has a call sign, and it goes with 6 for the commander. So my call sign was Rhino 6. So
I love that.
The Rhino was actually designed in white, and then when I retired, I decided that
retired-ish.
I got it made into black and gold to represent the Rangers, which the Ranger tab is black and gold.
Yeah.
So, and I use the tab, the Protection 6 tab, like a Ranger tab. So, I wear that. I wear the Rhino with the badge. That's a badge of honor that was given to me. Feel like I took care of soldiers. That's why they named me. They basically said, if there's a door, I don't care if you go through it, around it, underneath it, I'm going to get through the door. I'm going to get the obstacle. And that's what the Rangers taught me. Hey, a lot of people said, oh, it's a little mean, it's a little this, it's a little that. And I kind of held my ground. In the end, if you look at a Rhino, they're situationally aware. They're very keen on what's going on. And obviously, they could be very tame, or they could Rhino up. And when they Rhino up and they charge, you better get out of the way.
You better watch out.
You better get out.
Al's coming through.
You better get out of the way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And I've stuck with that. I had a lot of people early on that wanted me to change my logo for my company, and I just, I'm glad I stuck with it.
I love it.
And my dog, who's a shepherd now, he's going on 2 years. His name is Rhino.
Naturally, of course, yeah.
The previous dog, I had a husky. Love my Ranger buddy. He was called Ranger. My wife wouldn't let me name the second dog Ranger.
Again, okay.
So when
Ranger 2.
So when we filed paperwork at the AKC, it came back. I put Rhino down. It came back Rhino 6. I kid you not.
No way.
So his AKC, and I didn't request that. So his AKC paperwork says Rhino 6, which is
God.
Which is like, that's like that's like an omen right there.
Wow,
it's incredible.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I love the logo. I remember you just posted on Instagram. I think I commented on it the other day. And
well, thank you.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been following you for a while now. You've been following the show for some time, and yeah, I love it. Rhino.
Well, a lot of my soldiers, of course, commented that day because they know what the true meaning is with Rhino. And I like because General Gronsky, when he sees me, he'll say, "Hey, Rhino, how you doing?" So it's awesome.
Yeah. So how do you think all these security skills that that you've learned and training and everything from Ranger School to your deployments in Afghanistan, Iraq, all that? How do you think somebody could just take and apply that to just regular life or business? And obviously you've done that, right? You have your own business now, and how does that translate?
Well, I think one thing is you get a great foundation from the military, and you understand protection. Always protect your six. That's a military thing that came about from an aviator saying, watch your rear, protect your six. So if you're a law enforcement officer, if you're a military guy, you know what protect your six means, So, the foundation is there. I think what you have to adapt to in the civilian world is not military, okay? They don't know military time. I've been married to my wife for 20 years. My kids, they have no idea what 2,400 means or 2,300. Even my wife...
I have to do the math. I have to do it. Like, I'm not good at math, but like as you're saying that, I'm trying to subtract it and do the math in my head. Might take me a minute, but I'll figure it out.
And even my wife. So, that's one thing I learned early on, dealing with the civilian world. Okay, there's nothing wrong with saying 7 a.m. or 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay? But honestly, it takes some time. I think there's, you kind of grow up cursing in the military a lot.
Yeah.
So, that's something you probably have to temper down.
Just a little.
When you first get out. Right before I got out of the military, I was still in, and I was able to take some leave. And I went and met an incredible individual named Todd Fox. Todd is the ultimate quiet professional. Todd's a security practitioner extraordinaire. He's protected all the biggest musician celebrities in the world. He's protected diplomats over in Iraq, like I have and stuff. But he's quite incredible. And I went to a week program called Celebrity Protection Academy. And kind of funny story is I said to my wife, hey, it's in St. Louis. Why don't you come hang out with me? Probably be an 8-9 hour class. And, we could go see St. Louis, go see the zoo, go around, go there. Well, little did I know, Todd Fox was ratcheted up and our training was about 18, 19 hours a day, and we went nonstop. So my wife was a Lone Ranger. She was out on her own. She went to the zoo, always situationally aware of what's going on. But, she did her own thing. And then, of course, we did some time after that. But I built up a pretty big rapport with Todd with my work in Iraq. He's wrote some books. His second book, Protection from Humanity, he asked me to write the foreword for, which I'm humbled and honored that I was able to do that. And
we'll drop the link in the description in the comments so everybody could check out that book, by the way.
But Todd is always there for advice. Todd's been probably over 100 countries. He's doubled me in countries. And Todd is always willing to share advice. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's been on, big time podcast. Todd is a great man. But once again, one thing I'll never forget, he sat me down before I left St. Louis and he said, Al, I'm going to give you a little words of advice. Civilian world, civilian world, civilian world. It's not the military. Okay. You don't have to wear tactical pants. Okay, you don't have to talk military. You don't have to talk 24-hour, 2300, 2100. It's going to take a year for you to kind of customize yourself with the civilian world. You might be doing security, you might be doing protection, but in the end, they're still civilians. Okay, some have a military background, some have a law enforcement background, but you need to tone yourself down. And I will tell you, I've told him that 100 times, if not 200 times. That's the best advice I ever got, because it just mentally prepared me that I really need to start demilitarizing myself every day, because the civilian world is different. And, hey, police departments have rank structures, but, in the civilian world, hey, you have managers, you have VPs, you have things like that. And it's a different, it's just a different world. Some are leaders, others are not. General Gronsky talks about servant leadership all the time. General Gronsky's been on Jocko's podcast twice, so needless to say, that was a huge success. But General Gronsky's very humble. We talk all the time. He's a Ranger, I'm a Ranger. We graduated Ranger school. I mean, that bond's always been there. But he talks about servant leadership, and you can't be a good leader if you don't get involved in what you're doing. So I think back to my days in Afghanistan as an embedded trainer with the Afghans. When I went to Iraq, it wasn't like, hey, I'm in charge, I'm in charge of all you guys here. I run operations. I think in the end, hey, I went out on missions with them. I did certain missions with the media. I protected certain media people when they came in. And I think that my old CEO who hired me, Jim Reese, he would say, hey, you're able to go from the tactical to the operational to the strategic level. And there's not many people that could do that. So I understood what they were doing down at the tactical level. I understood operations from the military. But more importantly, I could do the strategic world. I'm talking to the ambassador directly. Okay. I mean, I'm in a one-to-one meeting with the ambassador. I'm talking to the regional security officer who runs all security for the U.S. Embassy, in Iraq. So, when the chamber came in, there was probably 20, 25 CEOs that were there from oil companies, different companies. So, I'm talking to CEOs of companies. I'm talking to Secretary Perry at the time, energy secretary. So, you have to, that's a skill set that's very hard to, I think, duplicate. But in the end, if the people underneath you, whether they're soldiers, whether they're workers, whether they're civilians, if they see that you're willing to put in the effort and you don't look down upon them and you do seek advice from them, and sometimes you actually implement their ideas, just like soldiers, you don't just listen to captains and majors when you're a colonel, you listen to privates. You better listen to the sergeants, because they're going to steer you the right direction. And in the end, that's what makes a successful leader. I think nowadays, social media has stopped some of that. Sometimes, people are all sitting in cubicles. Nobody talks to each other. It's easier just to send an email. I'm still old school. I like to pick up the phone and call people. A couple different times. I do a lot of risk assessments with my company. And people will say, well, your price is too high or this and that. And I say, hey, listen, you know what? I have a lot of experience over the years dealing with, people, management, upper management, CEO level, C-suite. I mean, in the end, when I do a risk assessment, the risk assessment is going to be accurate, and it's going to be looking at worst case scenarios. And unfortunately, I call it, some companies now want a soft risk assessment. They want everything to be peachy. Well, it's not. If you're a security guy and you're looking for vulnerabilities and you're trying to, somebody's trying to exploit that vulnerability.
Yeah, you got to pick it apart.
You got to pick it apart. A very small example. I did a risk assessment for a big manufacturing facility. Great procedures. Everything's written down, checkbox, this and that. They did have an incident with somebody, with an ex-employee, which workplace violence, I do a lot of work with that too, both on the education level and basically preparing them for things that might happen during a termination. But they said to me, well, the girls in the office are scared, so we put in a locking system. So, whether it's UPS or FedEx or anybody that comes in, we get to press the button. Okay. So, I go and interview a couple people in the office and take my notes. And the one receptionist says, I need to tell you something. Oh, okay. I had the maintenance guy put tape up there because it was kind of annoying me. Okay. Okay. Well, okay, let's see. You've just, your risk was there. You mitigated the risk by putting in a locking mechanism. Now, because it annoyed you,
you put some tape on it.
Now you're back to high risk. Okay, so I mean that's one very small example.
Yeah.
My doors, we don't ever leave doors open in the facility. Okay. Well, I talk to my contact out of state and say, hey, you know what? Let me go up a day or two later. Just kind of walk around. I won't ID myself or whatever. Just walk outside, see if everything's okay. Well, lo and behold, I'm in the building, take over 100 pictures, walk around, nobody stops me.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's, and we do a lot of work. I do a lot of work with schools too. So, and I told you I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
The whole Nashville thing is just, crushed me, to be honest with you. And, I see it all the time, not only in schools, but other places. Technology is great. And it's a multiplier. We used to call that a combat multiplier in the military. But in the end, you have to take a whole holistic approach. You just can't say, okay, I'm going to put in a metal detector and
it's all good now.
And everything's good.
It's the Band-Aid, temporary Band-Aid.
You always have the human factor, and I think, since that incident, a lot of schools are realizing that it's important that they either have a resource officer, credentialed police officer, or an armed security officer, or I think the best solution is a combination of both. You have maybe, one, maybe you have a resource officer, maybe you have two armed officers, or maybe you have, like Dallas right now, I think they just voted on it. They're going to have 2 full-time resource officers at the high school. They're going to have 2 armed security guards. But in the end, that's important. The police did an incredible job in Nashville. Probably the best that we've ever seen, from a response to basically engage in the suspect. But in the end, if you do have a resource officer or an armed security officer in there, that just cuts down on your time. Now, once again, in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's pretty upbeat on this. It's called Act 67. So whether you're a resource officer, credentialed police officer, or an armed security guard, you have to go through resource officer training. During COVID, they did a lot of it online, but it's, learning behaviors, things like that, what teachers do, program, mental illness, things like that. So, it takes a unique person. You don't need to be a SWAT guy to go into school, because you're dealing with children, whether it's, small children, middle school, or high school. And hey, there's, whether we want to admit it or not, there's a lot of challenges in schools right now. And it's because of COVID. And, the kids no matter what grade they're behind. Zoom is great, but it's not like, learning in person. I do Zoom all the time with clients. I'm not a big Zoom guy, but you know what?
Yeah.
Everybody got comfortable with Zoom
Yeah.
and technology. So, being in studio with you is awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
I've done
That's great.
podcasts, over the computer, and that's all good. But this is like a phenomenal
this is way
experience.
better.
I feel like I'm
Yeah,
contributing a lot more in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. It's so different. It's just so different. Like it's not even comparable.
Absolutely.
It's not. Yeah. But I want to go back to the school thing that you just said. So like, what do you think, what do you think this country, what do you think we need to do to really help fix this problem?
Well, I think one thing, I am involved in a program. It's called Hard Target Living. I do have a partner in this, Donna Miles. She's out of Florida. We work with the schools, we work with businesses, and we look at pre-incident indicators, which a real renowned security expert, Gavin DeBecker, talks about. But in the end, a lot of these students, a lot of these incidents, there's indicators. So I would give you a very basic example. We do a workshop with teachers, maybe with managers at with workplace violence, and we talk about baselines and anomalies. And a baseline, a baseline for your podcast is, hey, your baseline is you do it in person, you have a guest on, you have interaction back and forth. An anomaly would be, hey, if somebody, was jumping around, nobody in the chair, just somebody talk, that's a small example. In a school, it would be like this. If Johnny comes in every day and slams his book bag down, well, his teacher knows that that's Johnny. That's Johnny's baseline. And it's important that teachers do understand baselines. The day Johnny comes in and just sits down and sets his backpack down, that's what we call an anomaly. Well, maybe there's something going on. So to get a little more in that, for example, if somebody's coming through a metal detector, okay, if they're nervous about something or they show different signs of behavior, maybe there's something going on. So maybe before you get to the metal detector, you pull them on a line and go, hey, what's going on? Do you have a vape in there? Do you have a weapon? Is something going on? Something going on. So, you kind of learn that. You learn people's baselines and you learn their anomalies. One thing I learned in schools is when people say, oh, the dress. Early on, in Columbine, black rain jacket, all that. Well, if you saw I know but if you see the way kids dress today, pajamas, sweats, whatever. There's,
all kinds.
There's 200 different outfits in school.
Yeah.
So, an outfit really isn't an anomaly. But I think in the end, it's important. And I would say that, from what I've seen, a lot of disrespect to teachers. My daughter's her first year teaching. I talk to her all the time. Best trained teacher in the world with security out together. I can tell you that.
What and where does she teach? What grade?
She teaches 9th and 10th graders at Chambersburg.
Okay.
Graduated from Shippensburg and, student taught there and then, went on to teach right after that. But, a lot of disrespect to teachers, a lot of bad language. Their kids aren't afraid, these days to tell them that. And it's not like, when you and I were in school, if a teacher ever called home and wanted to talk to mom or dad, it was a bad day for me because I know,
I remember those days.
I know I would be grounded immediately.
Yep.
I know, and that's not the case now. So in the end, I don't think there's one easy solution.
I agree.
But I will tell you, teachers are the core. They really are. They do a phenomenal job. And listen, most teachers do know their students. Hey, listen, students come from broken homes. Okay, students, some students that come to school maybe don't get the nutrition they should get at home. So, there's things like that. And I think most teachers kind of know that. But there's other things that they could look at. And I think, like in Pennsylvania, I believe it's called Safe App. Kids could report things anonymously, on an app, And I think that's good because kids nowadays use apps. That's, technology. So why not use technology? Why not use technology as you can? But once again, the doors are always a big thing now. And in the end, a lot of times when doors are left open, it's human error. You could have the best program in place, but if somebody lets a fellow student in the back door,
props the door open,
which is very common to go out and smoke, things like
Always,
that,
yeah.
maintenance people. And that's almost every risk assessment I've ever done. It's doors.
I bet.
It's doors.
Yeah.
And it's never going to happen to me until it happens. Now, we've talked a lot about doors with Uvalde and all that. Well, now all of a sudden, the last one in Nashville, okay, they went in and shot out the door. So, listen, there's bulletproof glass, there's film, we use that stuff in Iraq. There's a lot of things, but just because you throw technology or something at the problem, that's still the human factor.
Sure.
One last example of a risk assessment. Somebody terminated somebody at a business in northeastern Pennsylvania, and I was called in after this. After this happened. But long story short, they took his badge at the end of the day. Okay, and that was it. Well, the next day, he wanted to come in and do ill intent. And he walked in the lower entrance, and he's been working there 10 or 12 years. So he waved at the receptionist. Nobody told the receptionist he was terminated the night before. He was in the building with a gun. So there, we're back to human error. Now, a simple solution for that is, hey, you have a chart diagram. This is what happens during the termination. This is who needs to be notified. Understand it's confidential. It's limited to certain people, but that woman that's been a receptionist for 15, 20 years, she was a critical person. And she did nothing wrong. When he smiled, she waved she waved him in. So a lot of times it is, we have the best policies and procedures, everything checked, marked out, but in the end, a lot of it does come down to human error.
Right.
And I constantly read and they say, well, we had the best policies and procedures in place. Well, great. If you did, why did this happen? And listen, things change. I could tell you just around here, Wilkes-Barre area and Hanover area has ID cards now for students to get on the bus, things like that, because there was a couple incidents that, they didn't know who person was. Somebody got on the bus. So in the end, they had a problem. They mitigated the risk by going to IDs. And that's what they did. So I think the biggest thing is with risk assessment and risk management, you have to honestly look at your risk. You have to look at what steps you can to mitigate them. And you have to accept some kind of risk sometimes. But, other times you should be mitigating those risks.
Yeah.
And like I said, some people, they think it's a bad report card when you do a risk assessment. They don't like it. So... can you tone down the language? Could you do that? Well, it's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
And if you don't fix it,
it's necessary.
Something could happen.
Yeah, it's totally necessary. Absolutely. So, all right, how can our listeners connect with you online?
So I'm a big Instagram guy.
You are.
I love Instagram. I've kind of shied away from LinkedIn. I know a lot of folks professionally tell me LinkedIn, hey, I do have a LinkedIn account. I have a lot of followers. But in the end, I think a lot of people just talk about their business, things like that. I think it's kind of almost gotten like Facebook. So
a little bit, yeah.
I'm a little, there certain things I'm okay with, but other things. So Instagram, I'm able to share my thoughts. Sometimes they're very pinpointed or they're lessons. But in the end, I feel like that's my comfort zone. Protection 6 on Instagram. And I have some interesting pictures up there. I have some interesting stories. And just because somebody doesn't like it, everybody's fixated on followers and likes and things like that. To me, I don't do that. If I could help one person out, that's like super critical to me. If I could do a risk assessment and I made an impact somewhere, that's important to me. If I could protect the client and I do a good job, that's important to me. I don't need to have 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers. I'm not that kind of person. So I have Facebook. I post a lot, honestly, on my own Facebook, Al Ornoski. I do a lot on that. A lot of family stuff. I think Facebook is good for that. Catching up with my old soldiers, seeing them with their families, seeing their daughters graduate, seeing their kids go to whatever. I mean, I think Facebook's a great way. Hey, there's some evil out there too. I get it. But Instagram, I feel like that's right. That's really my comfort zone. I've been in the process of my website, which is protection6.com. I'm very close, probably 30 to 45 days away. I probably overthought the process.
Yeah.
I've been back and forth with my web developer, but in the end, I think once the site comes up, it'll be relevant. It's, I think I got it at first. It was all about Al Ornoski. And that's really not what it's about. So I really had to revamp and rechange the whole thing. I have great folks that work for me, that help me out with risk assessments, help me out with, Dr. Oz, things like that. And they're great people. They're military people. They're law enforcement. They're emergency managers. They're EMS folks. So I'm able to pull in a lot of resources. And I think that's what, I tell clients. It's not just me. I'm able to pull in different individuals that have different expertises in certain areas. Like firearms. Hey, I could shoot. I've been doing it my whole life, but I'm not the best of the best. I have a couple guys. One's a retired air marshal. One's a retired ranger like me. So, those guys, that's all they do, firearms training. They're experts. That's what they are. So, I try to share the wealth. I try to help people with other businesses, help them out the best I can. And mentorship's important. Mentoring younger guys, how to do risk assessments, how to do the right thing, how to learn the soft skills about protecting people, things like that. That's important. But I love the Instagram.
Cool. Well, first of all, thanks for your service to our country. And, when I need some security, I know who I'm calling.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, this has been great, Al. Really. I appreciate you coming in today and sharing your experiences and your knowledge and all this, because I think a lot of people will be able to learn and take something away from some of the things you shared today. So,
well, thank you very much, Bill. It's an awesome opportunity for me, and I appreciate you allowing me to share some stories. And as always, we need to be able to thank our veterans from all the different wars: World War II, Korea, Vietnam, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan, the recent wars. And last but not least, I'd like to say a shout out to the Wilkes-Barre VA here, which does incredible job with our soldiers. My uncle was taken care of there for 2 years before he passed, and I know they do an incredible job here locally with taking care of our veterans. Thank you.
All right. Al Ornoski, Protection 6 on the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Bill.
If you want to see more On The Stacks content, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/OnTheStacks podcast, or search the hashtag OnTheStacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.